Today, we are diving into one of the most important Supreme Court cases in American history. Seriously, it's a story packed with political drama, bitter rivalries, and a clever legal move that would shape the power of the court forever. So let's start with a really basic question. The Supreme Court, right? 9 judges who are appointed for life. They have the power to look at a law passed by Congress, a law passed by the people we elect, and just say, nope, that's void. It's a massive power, probably the biggest check on everyone else in government. But where did they get it? Well, here's the crazy part. It's not in the Constitution. Go ahead, look for it. You can read the whole thing, cover to cover, and you will not find a single line that says the Supreme Court can strike down a law. It just isn't there. So if it wasn't written down, how did it become a thing? Well, the answer isn't some neat little clause. It actually comes from a messy, super high-stakes political showdown that went down in the very early days of the country. We're talking about the case of Marbury versus Madison, and this is the origin story of the court's greatest power. Okay, to really get what happened, you have to picture the scene. The year 1800 was tense. I mean, the whole country was basically a political tinderbox, and it was about to see its very first transfer of power between 2 political parties that absolutely hated each other. So in 1800, Thomas Jefferson and his party beat the sitting president, John Adams, and his Federalist Party. But back then, the new president didn't take office until March. In that lame duck period, the Federalists made a huge power play. They passed a law creating a ton of new judge positions. And in his final days in office, President Adams was furiously signing paperwork to fill every single one of them with loyal Federalists. By the time Jefferson finally walked into the White House, he found a pile of official commissions that Adams hadn't been able to deliver in time. And these last-minute appointees got a great nickname, the Midnight Judges. You know, the name itself just sounds kind of sneaky, like it was all done in the dead of night. The Federalists knew they'd lost the White House and Congress, so they tried to pack the judiciary, where judges serve for life, to keep their influence going. And this is where a guy named William Marbury comes in. He was one of those would-be midnight judges. His commission was all signed and sealed, but it was sitting in that undelivered stack. The new president, Jefferson, was not happy about this whole scheme, so he told his new Secretary of State, a fella named James Madison, do not deliver those papers. So Marbury had the job on paper, but the new guys were blocking him from starting. What's a guy to do? He sued. Marbury's case goes straight to the Supreme Court, which happens to be led by Chief Justice John Marshall. And here's the kicker. Marshall was actually Adams's old Secretary of State, the very guy who was supposed to have delivered the commissions in the first place. So now he finds himself caught in this absolutely impossible political situation. You see, Marshall was in a perfect political trap, a total lose-lose. If he sides with Marbury and orders Jefferson to deliver the commission, well, Jefferson would probably just laugh and ignore him. The Supreme Court didn't have an army to enforce its orders. An order that gets ignored makes the court look weak, like a joke. But if he sides with Jefferson, the court looks like it's just caving to political pressure from the president. Either way, the Supreme Court gets embarrassed and loses credibility. So this was the puzzle from Marshall. How do you assert the court's authority when you know you can't actually win a direct fight? He needed a third path, a way to thread this impossible needle. And the solution he came up with? Well, it was nothing short of genius. And this brings us to the ruling itself. Marshall didn't pick option A or option B. He completely changed the game in a way nobody, and I mean nobody, saw coming. He broke it all down into 3 simple questions. First, does Marbury have a right to the job? Marshall's answer? Yes, absolutely. Second, do our laws give him a way to fix this problem? Again, Marshall says, yes. It looked for all the world like he was about to side with Marbury and start a fight with the president. But then came the brilliant third question. Is the Supreme Court the right place to issue the order to fix it? And his answer to that was a shocking no. Here's the twist. Marshall said, Mr. Marbury, the law you used to bring your case directly to us, a part of the Judiciary Act of 1789, is actually unconstitutional. Why? Because that law passed by Congress tried to give the Supreme Court power that the Constitution itself didn't give it. So you had a conflict. A law from Congress was saying one thing, and the Constitution was saying another. So who wins in a fight between a law from Congress and the Constitution? Marshall lays it all out in this legendary line from his opinion. It is emphatically the province and duty of the Judicial Department to say what the law is. Basically, he argued that the court's job is to uphold the Constitution as the supreme law, and if a regular law conflicts with it, that law has to go. And that
was the masterstroke. See what he did? He gave President Jefferson the win he wanted in this one specific case. Marbury didn't get his job. But by doing that, he claimed a much, much bigger power for the Supreme Court for all time. The power to declare an act of Congress unconstitutional. It was like sacrificing a pawn on the chessboard to capture the queen.
And just like that, with this one decision, Marshall created a concept that is now the absolute foundation of the American legal system.
It's called judicial review. It's the idea that the courts get to be the final umpire. They can look at what the president does or what Congress passes and decide if it follows the rules of the Constitution. And if it doesn't, they can throw it out. This incredible power wasn't written down anywhere. It was born in this ruling.
And the impact of this cannot be overstated. Marbury v. Madison transformed the Supreme Court from what many thought was the weakest branch of government into a truly co-equal player. It cemented the idea that the Constitution is the ultimate boss, and it made the Supreme Court the final interpreter of what that document actually means. To this day, over 200 years later, this power has never been seriously challenged.
So think about that. The most profound power the Supreme Court has wasn't carefully planned out by the Founding Fathers. It was brilliantly invented on the fly, forged in the fire of a nasty political fight. And that very power is at the heart of our biggest and most passionate debates today, all tracing back to one guy who never got his job commission delivered.